Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Teamwork a Better Way. I'm Christian Napier, and I am joined, as always, by my princely and purple pinstripes co-host, Spencer Horn. Spencer, how you doing?
I am great. I always love seeing the man in black, Christian. Good to see you. And gosh, we not only are we on another podcast Friday, but I got to see you live and a couple of other friends at our favorite restaurant on Friday. That was so fantastic.
It was awesome. The food was delicious, and more importantly, I proved to you once again that I'm just not generated by AI, but I am a real human being.
Yeah, I know that. We just want to make sure our listeners know that.
Well, it was great to see you on Friday and enjoy that delicious mole, but I'm really even more excited for our guest today. He's amazing. So why don't you go ahead and give him the introduction he deserves?
Absolutely. Today we have Kyle McDowell, and former Fortune 10 executive turned inspirational speaker, best-selling author, and leadership coach. And Kyle is on a quest to create cultures of excellence around the world by reigniting leaders' passion and purpose. With nearly 3 decades, don't look that old, Kyle. Come on, you have 3 decades of experience. That's my end of the age scale. Leading tens of thousands of employees in some of America's biggest firms. And his philosophy is rooted in the trademark principles of what's called the 10 W's, which I'm excited to learn all about. And you know what, Kyle, there's so much more to this profile. I'm going to share a little bit more of it, but you and I spoke, and there's so much uncertainty. There's so much dysfunction. There's so much frustration in the workplace. And we were talking about the name of our podcast, Teamwork a Better Way. And that kind of, I don't know if that's what led you to say, is there a better way? Or did you ask that before? Because that's going to lead into my first question. But he has seen, Christian, so much dysfunction, and as you see, it's really the norm today with disengagement. And he's just had this incredibly successful corporate run. And really, he's really working on making massive change. And because of that, he's been in high demand as a speaker. As he's been his Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller, Begin With We, is really out there exploring the root causes, which I can't wait to hear about this. What are the root causes of this dysfunction? And really, he's speaking at all kinds of prestigious places. And now, one of the most prestigious places you could ever speak is on the Teamwork a Better Way podcast. Kyle, welcome.
Hey man, great to be here. But I have to say, fellas, that music at the intro, if that doesn't get your heart racing and wake you up and get you going, nothing will.
Yeah,
So
no, I'm
fired
fired up
here, man. Thank you for the intro too.
Thank you, Kyle. So, as I said, when you and I were talking, I'm just so curious why, in my experience, only 10% of teams, based on over 25 years of research with the company that I'm associated with, are high performing. And there's been so much data independent of that that's come out that says that number may even be high. Why are so few teams having high levels of engagement and low levels of dysfunction when there's a lot of smart people leading these companies that you've been associated with? Why is it in our statement that when we were talking about the content for today's topic, we say that your question, is there a better way, is a bold question? Why is that even a bold question in today's corporate America?
Spencer, that very question changed my life. And that is no exaggeration. So I guess for some context, so I spent about 30 years in corporate America, right out of high school, paid my way through my undergrad and then ultimately business school. But so that 30-year number is real. Had a lot more hair when I first started versus now, but I guess such is life. And I also, in that 30 years, I led really massive organizations. For some context, in my last two roles, I led collectively about 30,000 employees, massive footprint, really big, purpose-driven, impact-driven work. But I will tell you, man, the first 20 of those 30 years, there was a very different paradigm in my approach to my leadership than I stumbled upon in the last 10 years. In that first 20 years, I was essentially a product of what I observed. Let's bang our fist on the desk. Let's raise our voice. Results at all costs. Doesn't really matter how we get there. Let's just get there. And by most accounts, I had a pretty successful run at it. I had these cool corner offices, the fancy titles, but I also had a tremendous amount of apathy. And I don't think that's unusual, especially if you've kind of traversed the corporate landscape. The only thing that kind of matched the level of responsibility I was asked to take on was my level of apathy. Oh, by the way, along with my ego. I became so disconnected from the workforce. I became so kind of disenfranchised, which is a real gut punch when your apathy is toward the very environments that you created. So I was responsible for the environment that I was not a fan of any longer. And I just started to replay that very question, man, over and over again. Is there a better way? And that better way led me to something that is not new. It's I didn't create it. It's called principle-based leadership. And I think that is the foundation. I think ultimately that's the root cause of why teams are either very, very successful or they're not. And essentially, principle-based leadership just requires the leader to say, here are the standards. Here are the things that we will measure ourselves by. Here is our system of truths. And it's a very explicit list. For me, it's a very explicit list of standards. They're principles called the 10 W's. And I found my answer to that, is there a better way? The answer is yes. But it starts with establishing our principles. What do we stand for? And can we get a team of people aligned around those principles and move forward? What happens, I think, 99 out of 100 times when an organization welcomes a new hire, an employee into the fold, we go through this rigorous onboarding process. There's training. They get really intimate with the PMPs and the SOPs. But most organizations, nearly all, fail to establish those expectations for how we do the work. Not what we're doing, not the X's and O's, but how we behave, how we interact with one another, the standards that we set for ourselves, how we hold each other accountable, as well as what the leader's responsibility is in this entire.
But that's the question.
I think that's what's lacking today.
If there's so many smart leaders out there, why aren't more of them taking that approach? To me, that's the mystery. Because
it's not a mystery to me, man. At least in my experience, here's what happens.
Yes, that's what I want to hear.
Yeah, so Spencer, let's pretend you and I are on a team of 10, right? We're on the same team. And the boss who we report to, you and I, we're not big fans of him. Let's just say we kind of loathe the characteristics he brings to the table as a leader. Lo and behold, he gets promoted though. And you and I, we're go-getters, right? We want to take on more. We want to do more. We want to grow. We want to make a little more money. You and I raise our hand and we say, hey, I want that job. We go through this interview process and inherently we start to take on the characteristics and traits of our former boss, the person who is now responsible for hiring his own backfill. We take on those characteristics and the traits that we loathed in that person. Why? Because we want to endear ourselves to that person. And so this cycle repeats. The person who can almost always mirror the behavior of the boss or the person making the hiring decision, the more likely you are to get that role. So the cycle repeats and you continue to behave in those ways until someone just says, hey, wait, hang on. Is there a better way? And how am I going to behave and lead in a way that is better? So I think this cycle, and it's what worked for me, by the way, in those first 20 years. Every opportunity I had, I took on bad characteristics from leaders that I wouldn't even say that I respected. But
I so agree with you.
I wanted to go professionally.
Oh, I so agree with you, Kyle. When I talk about this idea, there's when it comes to getting a promotion, there's two approaches, I think. I mean, this is an oversimplification, but there's an earning style and then there's a winning style. The earning style just puts their head down, hope they get noticed. But people who are a little more aggressive, and that's usually what's promoted or rewarded in many corporate environments, is that winning style. Here's why I deserve it. Pick me, as you said, and then we want to model those perceived as winning characteristics. The corporate workplace oftentimes rewards some of the worst actors. I mean, but they're aggressive. They're the ones that are getting after it, and that's I think it's a mistake. I know it's a mistake.
It sends all kinds of bad messages to that group that does keep their head down and just works hard to be recognized. Right? It says that we reward this bombastic, even toxic behavior.
Right.
Well, this is really interesting. I'm super curious about this topic, but before we get into the framework that you created / adapted / evolved, I'm a little bit interested in the journey that you took, because you found yourself in a position where you didn't feel like you were satisfied, And you mentioned the word apathy, right? You were apathetic towards it. People can go in a lot of different directions, you know. Uh, I can quit my job and become a chef. I had a former boss who got really into racing and basically retired and started racing vintage cars. Like you can figure out all different kinds of things to do. So I'm curious why you chose the path that you chose. Like, okay, uh, you know, when you achieve what you've achieved, you know, at that particular time in your career, you had a lot of different options. You could probably do a lot of different things. uh, why settle on this one, right? I want to find a better way to do this thing that I'm doing, and I'm going to change my leadership instead of saying I'm going to go open a restaurant.
Yeah. So for me, it was, as I mentioned, probably about 20 years in, and there were signs. There were signs in addition to just dreading going to work, in addition to the Sunday scaries that became so palpable that I would need to medicate from time to time. I was on the doorstep of a divorce that ultimately came to be. My health was not where it needed to be. I was not nearly in the type of condition that I should have been, and it was all wearing on me. Now, I had reached a point in my career where, and I don't want to come across naive. I was very fortunate. I was at a place where I could step away from the corporate landscape, not indefinitely. I wasn't I wasn't in a position to retire, but I knew I could. I had a couple bucks in the bank. I could sit on the sideline for a month or two to determine, what was going to be my next gig. I just knew that um, I was so unfulfilled. And let me be clear. I think nearly every person enters the workforce with this really burning desire to make an impact. We want to find fulfillment. We want to do big things. I think we all enter the workforce that way. I think it's very common for us to lose touch with those emotions and those wants and those feelings. And I was no different. I just did not have that level of energy any longer, or care for that matter. So when I made the decision to step away, I made a promise to myself that I was not going to go back into the same scenario, right? I had this recipe, like I knew how to make things work. I knew how to be quote unquote successful. But I'd sensed that there had to be a better way to find more connection and have a really lasting impact longer than my tenure. Well, be careful what you wish for, because about 10 days out of that stepping away, I got a phone call asking if I'd be open to leading a group of about 15,000 people. It was a $7 billion program. I went through the interview process, and it was pretty obvious to me there was an opportunity for cultural transformation, not just an opportunity, but a real need. And B, I was going to be able to drive the car in a way that would allow me to really put my stamp on things. The only problem was I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what my approach would be. I knew what to do in days past, years past. The old Kyle knew how to get things done, but this was an entirely different animal. And it was a real gut check moment. So I took the role. About 60 days into the role, I commissioned the top 40 or 50 leaders of this massive organization into one place, because I wanted to use that as an opportunity for me to put, my expectations of them out there. But I wanted to be really explicit in the expectations I wanted them to have of me, which was a little bit of a departure from my previous approach to leadership. But the night before I was to go on stage and meet with these folks the next day, I was terrified, fellas. I really was terrified. I didn't, because it was a massive change for me. And this, is there a better way, kept playing through my head. So it's about midnight the night before. I'm in my hotel room. I've got my laptop open. I'm like, I got to put a few slides together. I can't just wing this entirely. And that's when this epiphany happened. And I do refer to it as an epiphany, because that evening and what happened over the course of the next couple of hours changed my life. Led me to write my USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestseller. It's opened doors for me that I never imagined. But the process that evening was very simple. Kyle, think through the scenarios that left you feeling less than fulfilled, left you feeling like not valued, like you were just kind of a cog in a machine. And then I started to identify behaviors that led me feeling that way. In addition, I flipped the coin over and I said, okay, how about a couple of bosses throughout your career that inspired you? Because I've had those as well. And as I'm typing, after maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, I have these 10 sentences, and they each begin with the word we. And I wrote them in a way that was like, okay, here's who we are. Here's what we're going to be known for. We do the right thing. We lead by example. Very, very simple kind of premises. But I'd never asked or been asked directly to say, hey, Are you going to be a part of a team that says we own our mistakes? I didn't want to be ambiguous. I needed to be very clear with this team. The next morning, I shared the principles with them. Fast forward several years later, those principles have left an indelible mark on that firm. They still have the 10 W's as part of their performance appraisals. There's signage around still. And frankly, that was the group that inspired me to write the book that set me on the mission that I'm on now, because the answer to that question, is there a better way, is undoubtedly yes.
Wow. That's, I mean, sorry, I was so engrossed in that story that I fumbled there for a little bit. You know, I love that story. And I love that you actually had the opportunity to drive the car, as you described it, in that company. You know, I've had lots of discussions with my son-in-law, just a brilliant kid, high performer. When I say top of his class, you know, Harvard MBA and undergraduate, I mean, Baker Scholar, just unbelievable, brilliant kid. Worked in investment banking, worked for Bain, you know, on the investment side and then on the consulting side. And in those environments, the partners expect those kids to work for about 2 years, because they're going to burn you out for, you know, 80 to 100-hour work weeks. And his brother did the same thing at Goldman. And so you got these major organizations where they come in and they take these bright kids out of college that they're all excited to make a difference, like you talked about, and they last for about 2 to 3 years. And then they go and leave to run their own companies because they're so burned out. And his values were family. He had like 3 kids while he's going to MBA school and then going out and working for Bain. And he would come home with taxi, you know, that he would book and sleep for about 3 hours, go back to the office, and just miserable. Health impacted just like you. So my question is, how do we get these major organizations, you had the chance to do it with a $7 billion company, to see that there is a better way and get out of this rut that they're in, that so many people are getting burned out and frustrated and low engagement? How you're on this mission, but how's it going? I mean, how is it received when you come in and say, hey, I got these 10 W's? How is it received? Do they say you're full of crap, or they're like, hey, we need you?
Spencer, the answer is yes. And it's very consistent, actually. The percentages of the different types of reaction I get. So the first time I ever shared the principles, the 10 W's, it kind of broke out into these 3 categories. 50%, actually 4 categories, three categories. 50%, man, this is great. I'm optimistic. I'm excited. I'm on board. Let's go. There was a quarter of the group that was like, we'll see. Okay, man, if this works, I'd be excited. We'll see. And then there was the he is full of it group, the obstinate group that just said, this guy's one of the guys, by the way, who I ultimately became great friends with, was in the audience that morning. He asked me for my PowerPoint. He said, because I really dig this stuff, Kyle. I want to share it with my team. Well, as we got to know each other deeper into my tenure there, he admitted that he only wanted the PowerPoint because he thought I plagiarized and stole the concepts, and he wanted to check the properties to see if I was the creator of that deck. So there was a fair amount of obstinance in a quarter of the group, and that seems to be more or less the reaction I get inside of organizations where I kind of either partner with them from a coaching perspective or do a keynote. But I'm not naive, because I get it. If I was presented my book earlier in my career, I probably would have had a similar reaction of, I don't know about this guy. What changes, what makes the change is, I mean, it's great to have these concepts, right? But I actually try to sometimes contrast them to mission statements or corporate values, which more often than not are just words on a wall that nobody can recite, and it doesn't compel anybody to behave any differently, work any harder, more collaboratively, more team focused. And I did not want to be associated with that. So these principles are behaviors, they're actions, they're quantifiable, they're observable. But once you establish them, nothing else matters more than the person who has established them living them. And that was me. And that was a departure from years past as well. And I think ultimately that's at the crux of why so many bosses stay in boss land and never advance to becoming an impactful leader, is because they're focused on, they stay maniacally focused on the results and less focused on the people who are responsible for delivering the results. And that one subtle shift with an overt focus on, watch me live my own standards and hold me accountable when I err. And I'll be open to that, which requires the boss to put him or herself in a place of vulnerability that they're probably not very comfortable with. It forces you to set aside your ego, because you can no longer have the loudest voice, be the smartest person, have the most influence in the room, because we're going to be we oriented. That means we all of the time. So when we establish the principles and we're conspicuous about them, and then most importantly, we live them over and over and over again and recognize others when they start to adopt and live them as well, this momentum is created. And that's what I was seeing in individual companies with whom I would partner. But now I'm seeing it on a more kind of macro scale. For some context, when I wrote the book, my hope was to sell 1,000 copies. I figured if I know enough people on this planet, maybe 1,000 people will pick this book up. We're selling 1,000 a week now. And we've reached sales numbers that I just never dreamt of. And it's not, I don't share that from a vanity perspective. I share that because it tells me that there is a hunger for this approach. And a lot of people are asking that question, is there a better way?
Oh, no.
Spencer's trying to push buttons and they're not.
I had
now
it.
We have Spencer's, we got your digital twin up here,
Literally
Spencer.
or figuratively?
Yeah, we'll fix that in a second here.
Hey, I want to follow up on this, Kyle, because I was recently in a leadership training session when they were talking about engagement, and the person who was presenting said, about a third of our employees are engaged, and about half of them are they're doing their job, right?
Or actively disengaged, right?
They're doing their job, but they're like super really high engaged. And then there's about 17% who are disengaged or actively hostile, right? And you kind of gave a breakdown of similar, like, okay, we got 50, 25, 25 or whatever. And some of those skeptics, they've been around for a long time. They've seen regimes come and go. They're like, it's just another dude, and
Yep.
And so my question to you is how what's the process that you go through to win over the skeptics? And sometimes do we put too much energy and attention into trying to win those over versus focusing on the other majority of people who will get on board? Because sometimes you can say, well, this small percentage of people who are the rabble rousers, we're just going to put in processes to weed these people out and get better people in. What was your thought process kind of going in and dealing with these different kinds of groups of people, the people who really were enthusiastic, the people that were just kind of like, okay, whatever, we got a new guy here. And then the other group that was just like, this guy's full of garbage.
Yeah. You will never get 100% on board. I think we can all agree to that. You asked a question within the question that I think is really important. And that is, how do you decide how much energy to put into the obstinate cohort versus those that are early adopters? And I want to share a really brief story to highlight why not giving up on the obstinates is really, really important. Now, the why is a really important to ask, a really important question to ask when we're talking about obstinate people. Why are they behaving that way? More often than not, they behave that way because they've been burned, right? The last new guy or gal came in, got them all excited, but never lived up to their own expectations, never held themselves to the same level of accountability that they said they were going to. So when I introduced these principles in that 25% cohort of the obstinate folks, there was a woman who was incredibly difficult with me at every turn, in public settings, staff meetings, bigger group meetings, bigger sessions. My favorite example of her being difficult with me was I was new to the team and I said, "Hey, Julia, can you please pass me this Excel workbook because I wanted to check the references. I was trying to learn. I wanted to see how this formula affected that, right? Just trying to get smarter." She sent me a screenshot It's not helpful at all. If you've ever worked in Excel, you know a screenshot is not going to help you. So I was a little frustrated, but I very politely replied, "Hey, Julia, could you send me the whole workbook, because I want to see how the tabs in each sheet interacts with one another." No problem. I get an email with an Excel. It's got one tab in it now. Didn't have the other tabs. So at this point, I was ready to bang my fist on the desk. I was ready to be the boss that I had been for so long, but was trying to get away from. And I should point out that two of the principles are really kind of relevant to this story. Number 8 is we challenge each other. And number 9 is we embrace challenge. For whatever reason, at that point in my kind of journey, I recognized Julia was challenging me, not because of me, but because she had been burned. And she wanted to see, even if subliminally or kind of without her knowing, she wanted to see if I was the guy that was going to take my own medicine and embrace the challenge. Fast forward, that was 2017. What are we in? 25, 8 years later. I haven't worked with Julia in 4 or 5. We had a one-on-one this morning. And I share that story, and I use her name freely, and she knows I tell this story because she would tell you she was no fan of Kyle's early on. But now she is one of my most trusted professional confidants. She's a great friend of mine. We bounce each other's career moves off of one another. She helped me name the book. I was at least had the wherewithal to recognize the why with her. The fellow that had the role before me was let go, and I believe the woman before him might have been as well. So she had seen the Kyles come and go and make promises and invariably disappoint her and not keep them. So the why matters a lot. You have to make that decision. If you're trying to drive transformation, you have to make the decision. Is the person who's being obstinate just by nature a saboteur, and they can't be saved? They have no desire to meet you halfway or even at all. And those are the ones that I think you just got to turn a cheek to and focus on the others. But but when you can find those Julias, that woman would run through a wall for me because she knows I would for her as well. And we never would have gotten to that point if I didn't put my ego aside and be a little understanding of why someone was behaving the way they were behaving. And we just I think we both look back at that moment and those moments collectively and say, what a shame it would have been if we didn't work our way through that.
I love that story. But it sounded like to me, though, that you were at first, you weren't sure of her intentions. Maybe you guessed at them, but you were like, I've got to stay true to this value if I'm gonna do this thing. And I love that integrity. And one of the things that this highlights for me is, you were early talking on one of the first we's you talked about is the fact that we do this collectively, and that the leader, it doesn't have to necessarily be the smartest person and needs to be vulnerable. I had a great example, and I've talked about him on this show, Kelvin Cullimore, out of college, one of the best mentors I've ever had in my life. And he was somebody that had incredibly high standards, but you wanted to work for this man. And because, and I interviewed him for my book here earlier this year, and I said, tell me your leadership philosophy. He said, I believe that the divinity of the human soul is paramount. So he valued people so much that he cared about them, he treated them, yet he had these high standards. So it's not that when we start implementing these ideas like the 10 W's that you're talking about, that we're going to give up, control for productivity and high standards. You can have both, because I love what you said. These other two are, we challenge each other, and we accept challenges, right? I mean, that's what high performing teams do. When you have a trust on the team and somebody doesn't follow through, there's not a defensiveness when you call it out. It's like, you're right. Hey, you didn't set that pick, Christian. And so we didn't score. It's like, you're right. I'll do a better job next time. But you have that vulnerability and that willingness to accept feedback and challenge on the team. It's magic. And
I thought it was important to have an element of challenge in these principles, because let's face it, historically, challenge always come from the boss.
Right.
But mathematically, if they're a team of 10, mathematically, it's impossible for that one human being to recognize and issue the appropriate challenges to get the best out of all 10 team members. Like we see it in sports. That's why there are assistant coaches and position coaches and coordinators, right? We must have challenge come from within, peer to peer, especially team member to leader, which terrifies a lot of bosses. But that is where trust is found. That is where connections are made. We have each other's back, and we have standards that we hold each other accountable. If I can challenge you, it needs to work the opposite direction as well.
But don't people on that team want to matter just as much? Don't they want to have the ability to contribute and to shape and mold that team if they're really engaged? I mean, if they are engaged, by definition, there's going to be a challenge from them.
Yeah, brother. Preach. I boil it down. It's so simple to me. I look at it from this perspective. ABCs. Every human being on the planet, and especially once they enter the workplace, they want to add value. A, we want to add value. The B is we want to be valued. We want to be recognized for the value we've created, our contribution. And in the scenarios where you're really lucky, we can connect the value that we've brought to those that ultimately benefit from it, whether it's a consumer, maybe it's an internal department. Right?
Those two things you just said,
be valued and connected.
Those two things you just said are one of the hugest reasons why people love their work if they have that opportunity. Bingo. And one more, that they actually are challenged a little bit above what they're able to contribute. In other words, they're growing. So think about individual J curves, right? You get to the top of, hey, I know what I'm doing. Then they start to lose disengagement. They become bored. But if you challenge them to learn and to grow, meaning giving them more opportunity, that creates more excitement and engagement. Sorry, I'm preaching. Christian, I know you got a question. I'll shut up.
Yeah, I want to get into the wheeze.
Me too.
The 10 wheeze. And I'll come at it through the angle of the story that you just shared with us, Kyle. In that story, you mentioned something that we all know happens. A new leader comes in, promises are made, promises are not kept. And so, my question is, why does that happen? I genuinely believe that most leaders, when they come in, they are pretty optimistic. They do feel like they can make a change. They have a fair amount of confidence. Mm-hmm. They present their plan after study, but in many cases, they're unable to follow through, for whatever reason. And I'm curious how those reasons for the lack of being able to follow through and keep those commitments or hold up those ideals, how those then are reflected in the 10 wheeze.
Yeah. So let's remember the premise that I wanted to establish that evening when I created the principles and there ever since is largely driven on establishing a level playing field where there's no leadership gap, where the boss has the same level of expectations and is accountable just the way the employee and the team is. Where that breaks in the scenario you're describing is really pretty simple. It's like, as the boss, if I tell you I'll get back to you about that training you asked for, you came to me the other day and said, hey, Kyle, man, if you could find a course or some type of training to help on my Excel skills, I think I could be so much better in this role. And I say, you got it, Christian. I'm going to go look into this and I'll get back to you. The repercussions of me not following up, there are none. Other than my brand, other than how you trust and respect me, massive fallout, right? On the flip side of that, if I go to you and I say, Christian, your Excel skills are not where they need to be, but I get it, man, and I'm invested in you. I want you to get better. How about you go find an Excel class and I'll get it funded? Or you make a mistake on an Excel-related project that you're working on. The repercussions of that mistake are real. It's that one-way paradigm that says what's good for you is not good for me in this leadership gap. And that's where trust is, if it was ever established, it erodes. So if that is the walking in premise of what I'm trying to eradicate, there has to be a standard in there. And there is. So we know there's a we now that says we say what we're going to do and then we do it. And if the premise of this entire list of principles is I must hold myself accountable and you as well to me kind of adhering to these behaviors and vice versa, we're all in this together. We all have the same set of standards. These are our foundational truths. These are who we are. And I say to you, we say what we're going to do and then we do it. I'm either a hypocrite or I'm a man of my word. And it's up to me. But I cannot expect you to make your commitments and keep them to those we serve externally. And probably, I think, even more important, keeping our commitments to our teammates and those that are behind the curtain, which we've all been a victim of those commitments not being met, and this domino effect happens. I just happen to believe if as your leader, I expect things out of you, you have an obligation to expect those out of me. And when we say we're going to do something and we do it, and it's one of our fundamental principles, it's our truth. It's easy to say, hang on a second, Christian. It's easier for you rather in the scenario I mentioned earlier. You come back and say, Kyle, hey, remember we say we're going to do, and then we do it, right? Because I'm the guy evangelizing these principles. And I say, yeah, Christian, that's right. And you said, well, you were going to get back to me on this training, and I'm sure you're busy. Something came up, whatever, but I want to point it out that it's an obligation or a commitment that you made. Can we get that going again? And then again, the ego must be set aside, be a little bit vulnerable to say, I blew it. There's another we that says we own our mistakes. I blew it, Christian. I'm sorry, man. Let me get back on that, and then give it high priority and circle back to you. But there can't be disparate expectations in how we follow up, how we treat one another, and our behaviors. And that's what these principles aim to do, is set that standard.
And I love that. That's one of the we's. And I want you to, if you can, maybe just summarize them all, because we're kind of getting bits and pieces of them here, that we are going to make mistakes. And I like that, that you make allowance for that. I think that's really important. So you had this epiphany. I mean, or you were preparing for this presentation. By the way, how did it go when you actually did the slide deck for this new position that you took?
I was terrified. They didn't know it. They do now. And as I mentioned,
because this is a whole new thing. You're like, am I an imposter here? Is it going to work? Man. I mean, I can 100%. Imagine all those things going on in your head.
100%. Yeah. Listen, I'm not proud of it, but I led with a bit of an iron fist. And behind that iron fist was a pretty good sized ego. So for me to stand in front of a group of strangers, largely strangers, I'd gotten to know a handful of people in the room, to say something like, and this I will tell you is a verbatim, I'm parroting back one of the sentences I shared that morning. And it was so profound to me at the time. It's like, whoa, did you really just say that? That it stuck with me this many years later. And as I walked through the principles, I concluded and said, and by the way, guys, these are the same principles I expect you to hold me accountable to. And if I deviate, I expect you to grab me by the ear and say, dude, you're being a hypocrite. I wouldn't have even used the word dude in the previous 20 years. But it was like, okay, man, this is your gut check moment. This is you now have a chance to be the leader you've always wanted to have, be the leader you never were, and try to reconnect with that sense of fulfillment and excitement and passion. So let's do it. So I was terrified. But maybe I'll take you up on your ask. Let me just quickly run through the principles, and I'll share one really very brief caveat, and that is, I know they're simple. They're incredibly simple. Simple does not always mean easy. Like, there's so many things in life are simple that we don't do, right? We know the recipe to lose weight, take in fewer calories, burn more calories. It's not easy though. Very simple, but not easy. The principles are no different, and they require a choice. You have to make a choice to lead in a better way, as we've discussed, but you have to make that choice every day. It's not a one-time thing, because scenarios will change and you're going to get challenged over and over again. And it's going to be easy to lean back into your business card. So this is a choice that must be made over and over and over again. We start with the most fundamental, foundational. It's number one, we do the right thing always. And I never leave out that one word, second sentence, because the right thing can be fleeting. We can argue and disagree about what the right thing is. We will never approach a scenario or a difficult task in front of us without that front of mind, because when no one's looking, it's easy to cut corners from time to time. We all know that. But if we're all aligned on doing the right thing, it makes it much harder, because we know we're going to let our teammates down. But if I'm going to be committed to doing the right thing, I have to be prepared to live number two. And that's, we lead by example. You're already leading by example. So let's just get that out of the way. There's no question about, should I lead by example? You are leading by an example. The question is, am I leading by an example I would be proud to see replicated? If it would replayed in the company newsletter, or There was a documentary film crew following me. My filter is my mother. My mom's been gone for about 13, 14 years now. If she were on my shoulder, did I treat the person in front of me in a one-on-one the way that would make her proud? And it's not the big things. It's not just like, our fancy vocabularies and how we dress and how we carry ourselves. It's not those things. It's like when I'm walking down the hallway as a leader in this organization, is my face buried in my phone? Or do I look up and say, hey guys, what's up? Hey, Spencer, Christian, good to see you guys. Because that example is what I'm setting, and that's going to be played out. Those two are going to keep their head down and not talk to the next person coming their way. And pretty soon we're a bunch of people with the same badge, but we're not on the same team. So if I'm going to lead by example, I've got to do what we've already talked about. I got to make good on my commitments. We say we're going to do, and then we do it. It's pretty simple. And that matters probably more behind the scenes, because if we're high functioning and holding our commitments behind the scenes, the odds of us doing it for our clients and those we serve externally is exponentially greater. So when we make good on our commitments, that requires what? We have to take action. So number 4 is we take action. And I like to add a little follow-up that says taking action and making a mistake, that's okay. But being idle is not. Everyone on every team is almost always aware of something gnarly in the corner that would probably make our jobs easier or make the customer experience better. It's either too expensive or I'm not going to get any credit for it. So why bother with it? And worse off, if I take a swing at it and miss, I could get reprimanded. So there's very little incentive. But on a we-oriented team, when we're trying to build a culture of excellence, it's like when we see something, we're going after that. We're at least going to discuss it. It may not be number one priority, but we're going to identify ways to get better every single day. And we're not going to turn our cheeks to them. But if we want people focused on taking action, we got to be prepared for mistakes. It's what I touched on earlier. It's we own our mistakes. Man, I truly believe we don't judge people by their mistakes. I believe that. We judge them by how quickly they fix it and if it happens again. And I think we've all been associated or had that restaurant experience where you get something's underprepared or overprepared, whatever, you send it back. It's how they handle it. Like you'll go tell people how they handled it more than you will tell them how good or bad the food was. So we have to be prepared for mistakes. Just own them, get them out, use them for growth opportunities and move on. But the only way people are going to do that, consciously and consistently do that, is with the following weed. The weed that comes right behind it is we own our mistakes is followed by we pick each other up. So when a member of the team stumbles, we got to be there. When someone has an issue at home outside the workplace, because we all bring baggage to work, we got to be there for them. It's also the boss's, or more appropriately, the leader's obligation is to help people reach new heights. We don't just pick them up when they're down. I think it's a human obligation to help members of our team achieve their next step, whatever that is. They want my job. Let's talk about it. Let's figure out how to put you in that position. You want to lead the team? No problem. Where do you want to go? How do we arm you to get there? The outcome of that, while you still have them, is not less loyalty. They don't work less hard because they know you're committed to them. They're going to be committed to you while you have them, while you're on the same team. One of my favorites is right behind that. So number 7 is we measure ourselves by outcomes, not activity. And this is so pervasive and mostly found in our meeting cadence. Too many meetings, not enough impact from those meetings. And I boil it down pretty simply. You have a finite list of objectives that are probably on your annual appraisal. Hopefully you get more than one appraisal a year, or your evaluation more than once a year. But most organizations, it's once a year. You have a very finite list of things for which you're accountable. If you cannot draw a straight line from your activities, your meetings, the things that you're doing on a daily basis, if you cannot draw an imaginary straight line to those outcomes, they should be scrutinized. Why am I doing this? And often you'll find that there's very little value in a lot of the things that we're doing. They certainly don't connect to the outcomes that we've been asked or tasked to deliver. Number 8 and 9, I've already touched on. We challenge each other and we embrace challenge. And then we round out with the final is number 10. And I was purposeful to leave this at the end because I think it's really a recipe for disappointment. If it's any earlier, we obsess over details. Details matter a whole lot. And I walk the reader through a kind of a fishbone decision matrix of how you determine how much time to obsess over whatever activity you're in. First of all, if it's going to go outside your 4 walls, if a client's going to see it, or if it's a marketing slick, or anyone outside of our team is going to see it, you must obsess. And it comes down to like the margins of our presentations, how well we represent the brand, our personal brand, as well as the brand that, with the organization. But the point here is details are what separates average from above average. It's what separates good bosses from great leaders, mediocre organizations from really high performing and value driven organizations. So I think you got to obsess over the details. Simple, not easy. And these are always the results of a choice that must be made over and over again and reinforced when others live it, and kind of called out diplomatically when others don't. I'm grateful.
Sorry for cutting you off there. We are
No,
glad you shared them. I have a comment that they're not loading, so I'm just going to read the comment that we have from Patrick Hoban. I don't know if you know him, Kyle. He says, "You have perfectly captured the essence of transformative teamwork. Starting with we instead of me is how we build cultures of true collaboration and shared success." Well said. So what you're saying is resonating with people. Certainly resonates with me.
Man,
I want to say one more thing, Christian, before I throw it back at you, that I teach one of the things that I teach executives more than anything else is delegation, how to let go and empower other people. And I'm not just talking about giving them tasks. I'm having them involved in solving the problems of the business. And the steps are so basic, I say you're going to want to dismiss them thinking, but when you put them all together, you are going to struggle. You're going to fail at it because it is a completely different way of thinking, and to actually to put these all into practice. But they are so basic that we can say, well, that's too easy. I mean, how can you even write a book about this? They're brilliant, though. You're exactly right. I love those 10 W's. Thank you for sharing them.
My pleasure, fellas. Thank you.
I love this. I love this concept. I'm not just saying that because, I got a guest on here and I'm trying to be nice. No, I'm serious. Like I really, really, this really resonates with me. You mentioned that the we do the right thing always is the foundational principle, and the other 9 things are the right things, right? Like the other 9 we's are the right we's. Like we need to be doing those. But I'm curious, as you go into organizations, are you finding that there are certain we's that some organizations generally struggle with more than others? Or, if you were going to give a letter grade to an organization, if they don't get number 1 right, then they're just kind of failing all over the place. I mean, are there certain areas where you see some, I don't know if trends is the right word, but, commonalities between organizations where, this particular set of we's, are the ones that people seem to be struggling with the most?
Yeah, absolutely. 2 come to mind quickly, but I think attributing missteps or lack of embrace of a couple of principles and saying it's the organization is kind of a cop-out. I've never met a person named leadership. I've never met anybody named management. These are human beings who are making decisions, sometimes subconsciously, but are making decisions to lead in a way that is not as impactful as it otherwise could be. The 2 that jump out to me as the toughest for genuine and sustained embrace are the first is we challenge each other. It's hard for me to get out, but it is the absolute toughest because it requires the boss to say, all right, I'm going to set my ego aside, and you are not only allowed, you are obligated to challenge me. Now, there is a rule. We challenge each other does come with a rule. Your challenge must be grounded in either data or experience. Otherwise, it's your opinion, and we all have them, and that's not necessarily helpful. I'm moved by data or experience. So if we're in a staff meeting and I say, here's the approach we're taking, and we're heading down this path, and a member of the team was involved in a similar scenario, maybe they were in a different company, had a similar rollout of a similar marketing campaign, and they know from their experience that this is ripe with errors. They must challenge me. They must challenge me diplomatically, but bring that experience to the table. But more importantly, the boss, the leader of that team, must be open to hearing that challenge. That's a hard one for folks to get. Now, every single person I've ever worked with will tell me, yeah, I get it. Of course. Yeah, man. Yeah, we challenge each other. I'm going to be open. It's easy to say, but when it's actually in your face, when someone's sending you a screenshot instead of a workbook, it's really easy to lean back on your business card and say, give me the damn document. But that's not embracing the challenge. That's being a boss. And then I mentioned that there are 2. The other one is outcomes versus activity. And it's such an insidious problem inside most organizations, regardless of size. And that is this dependency on meetings. Not only the dependency on meetings, but the lack of meeting etiquette that is not only slows progress, it actually drives resentment among the team, because it's like, oh shit, I got to go to this meeting again that I didn't have any value. I didn't leave that meeting with any value. I don't think I even contributed any value. Korn Ferry had a study reasonably recently that said 63 respondents, 60 something, I forget the exact number, respondents said, I will go to a meeting even if I know it adds zero value to the role that I'm in or the job that I am, out to accomplish or deliver. 63%. So the meeting etiquette starts when we send an invite and there's a subject, but there's no details of why we're meeting, right? No anticipated outcomes, know what we're hoping to accomplish, just like show up. And then we show up and we got too many people in the room. Scope creep starts to become a real thing. We don't document who's responsible for what. We show up a month later to this recurring meeting, not knowing what we accomplished last time. We certainly don't recall who was on point to do something. So the etiquette must be addressed, I think, as well as the principle in itself. But the point here is, the example I love to use is, man, fellas, I love that my Uber driver picks me up with gas in the car. That's an activity in which he or she must have been engaged before they get to the outcome, but I'm not paying for that. I'm paying to get from A to B. And I think if most consumers or customers or those that consume our product or service, if they knew how much time we spend in meetings that don't change the outcome of the product that they're buying from us, they would be really, really frustrated with that. But we wear it like a badge of honor. I was booked 7 times yesterday. I had meetings back to back from 8 till 6. That's not impressive to me. Let's talk about the outcomes from those meetings before we get too excited about the time that we're spending in them.
Yeah, absolutely. Outcomes versus activities. We could spend an entire session just on effective meetings, Kyle and Christian. Hey, really quickly, I'm really excited to share. We've got a sponsor, and that's Team Coaching International. Every leader knows the pressure to keep improving team performance, but where do you start? That's where the team leader view comes in. And in just 20 minutes, this powerful online diagnostic shows you how to see your team's strengths and challenges compared to a proven model used by thousands of teams worldwide. It's more than a survey. It's feedback on the impact of your leadership, which is what we've been talking about. You'll see where communication, trust, accountability, and alignment are working, and where small changes can make big results. And so if you're watching this, you can take a screenshot and you can download and get an application for the diagnostic for free. And if you're not, if you're just listening to this, we'll give you the link to download for the show notes. Christian, I had to do that super quickly, but we're running out of time. We've already gone 50 minutes, and it feels like this has gone so fast.
It has gone so fast. So why don't we end it fast, Spencer? Because I know you've got a lot of questions and not a lot of time. So maybe we do a little lightning round with.
Well, I do want to do a lightning round, but I do want to ask you how. So many of my questions you've already asked, but if a team wants to adopt or really adopt these 10 W's, how do you recommend that they start doing that? I mean, how can someone take what you've been talking about today and make it come to life in their organization?
I love to answer that question with what the one and only thing you should not do. And that is show up to work on a Monday because you picked up some book, or maybe you watched a podcast or whatever, however you were exposed to this approach, and say, this is what we're doing. Everything changes today, guys. This is who we are now. Let's everybody put your hands in. Let's go. That's an initiative, and that is not sustainable because motivation is fleeting, right? The motivation is there. It's ripe. It feels good. It's the right thing to do. But it is fleeting. We need a sustainable approach. And for me, it's very, very simple. I don't own this. This is not me telling you what we're going to do or how we're going to behave. This is me telling you how I expect you to hold me accountable, how I expect you, the things you can count on from me. Now, I'm going to hold you accountable to the same standards. It's my hope that you subscribe to these. And I use that word too. And it's not accidental. I hope you subscribe to these principles. Rarely is anybody going to say, "Nah, this is not for me, man. I don't believe in doing the right thing. I don't want to lead by example. This is just no one's going to look you in the eye and say these things are not for me." However, if they do, in the random event someone does, the approach I always take is no hard feelings. I will help you find another role, and I don't mean I'm going to fire you. I mean, I'm going to work to find something for you either inside the organization, or if you want to leave, bounce somewhere else. I'll do whatever I can to help you find that role. But make no mistake, these are the standards by which we measure ourselves. Once the boss, more appropriately, hopefully transitioning to a leader, makes that statement or that series of statements to say, here are the black and white things. And by the way, almost everything I do is in black and white for this very reason. There's not a lot of shades of gray in here. It's like you're on board or you're not. Once the team and you are aligned that these are our expectations, now we have to live them conspicuously every single day. It's like, and there are some subliminal benefits once everyone has subscribed. It's like, you got to have a tough conversation. The first thing you say is, hey, we challenge each other, right? Hey, Christian, Spencer, we got to have a tough talk, man. And we challenge each other. And then you go into the issue. Also, when someone's not performing the way that you kind of have expected them to, or maybe it's different than the way they've performed in the past, you start that conversation by saying, hey, I'm a little concerned, and we pick each other up, right? You don't have to share exactly what's going on, but I just need you to know I recognize something's going on, and I'm here for you. Why? Because I care, man. I care. We pick each other up. So once the subscription has been kind of secured, how conspicuously can we evangelize these principles over and over again? Facing a tough decision, you say, well, we always do the right thing, right? So let's figure this out. The more it's played over and over again, these words become part of our nomenclature. They're our daily vernacular, and they almost become a cultural currency that everyone has the same amount to spend. And it's a shame when they don't. But we can't be subliminal and just assume that people are going to start living these principles. They have to see me do it. I can't talk about it. They have to see me live it. My words are important, but they mean nothing if my behavior doesn't match it. And that's where I think the best of intentions slide off the side of the road, is when our intention becomes to have this big transformation. But when reality smacks us in the face and says it's harder, it requires more energy from the leader, requires more time spent on a different series of things, not just outcomes, but the people actually delivering the outcomes. It is harder. There's no question. But the fulfillment on the other side, the connections that we make, this leadership legacy that we create, is something that we can look back and be very proud about. But not only that, the results take care of themselves. It's not hypothetical.
So no wonder you were terrified when you were going to roll this out, because it requires courage. And by the way, courage is not the absence of fear, right? And so I heard you've got to be courageously willing to make yourself vulnerably out there. Just put yourself out there, and then it's a process, and it can take years really to make that happen. That's what I heard. So lightning round, super fast. All right, we may not get through all of them. Number one, the most powerful we in your own leadership journey.
We challenge each other.
Number two, one leadership lesson you learned the hard way. I think you shared that, but
it's probably not what you're thinking. It's ask for help.
Excellent. A principle you never compromise on.
We do the right thing.
A team leader you admire, and why?
William Krenz. Reported to him for a few years at one point. He gave me a scope of responsibility that I had no business owning. It was going really well in what I had historically owned. He gave me an opportunity. I said, he's crazy. I'm going to fail at this. It's never going to work.
That's the stretch I was talking about, right?
That's it, brother. Yep. We talked about this recently. I don't talk to William often, but we talked about that scenario. We still laugh about it, how I was so pissed off at him that I was set up to fail.
I love that. One word that describes a healthy culture.
Transparent.
A book or podcast that shape your leadership style.
Two books, From Values to Action by Harry Kramer. Brilliant man, great book. The second is a curveball you may not expect. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah. What's your go-to reset when work feels overwhelming?
Fitness.
Excellent. One more. We before me in one sentence. Go.
No leadership gap. I think one sentence is a tough one for that, man.
Yeah,
We got another hour, don't we?
It's a challenge. Well done.
It is a challenge, and I cannot believe that we've already spent an hour having this conversation. I could go a lot longer. Kyle, it's been an honor to have you as a guest. If people want to learn more about the 10 W's, about how you could potentially help the organizations or help them as individuals evolve their leadership, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, pretty simple. So pretty much all social media is the same. It's at Kyle McDowell Inc. My website is kylemcdowellinc.com. Book is Begin with We, 10 Principles for Building and Sustaining a Culture of Excellence. It's wherever books are sold. But I didn't want to get too far down the road without saying thank you to you guys, man. You guys are doing really important work. You've got a great following, and I'm honored to be a part of it and share a bit of my story with you today. So, big thanks.
Thank you.
Well, we really appreciate your time here, and more importantly, the knowledge and wisdom that you've dropped on us in the last 60 minutes has been just invaluable. And Spencer, you've been helping teams, organizations build high-performing teams for decades. How should people connect with you?
Just LinkedIn, and hey, we got a comment that showed up. I don't know how it worked, but here's what Felicia Schoenthal says exactly: assign action items with the expectation of updates and progress in the next meeting. So she's going back, no judgment, simply open mind, transparency. Felicia, thanks for chiming in. We love that when we hear from you. Christian, same thing. How can people find my amazing friend Christian Napier? And isn't he great, Kyle?
Fantastic. Man in Black, like you said. Take on a new one.
I'm easy to find. Just look me up on LinkedIn. That's great. And in the spirit of taking action, thank you, listeners, for joining us. Please like and subscribe to our podcast, and we'll catch you again soon.